All right, man. We have been working together for a little over a year now. Can you believe that?
No, I was just going to say, I can't believe it's been over a year. I literally remember the first day getting back from my honeymoon and hopping in the car with you and driving down to some of the neighborhoods I didn't know too much about at the time.
Yeah. We went to that property in Dalton. That was interesting.
Yeah.
I love when you tell that story, though. But maybe we'll get into that later on.
Yeah, we can talk about that in the next episode.
What, man, like you came, you actually sought me out, which was awesome because I think anyone that's looking to hire somebody, you put yourself out there. And one of the things is you want people on your team that want to be on your team, right? Some people, just a lot of people that just take a job because they need a job because they need to provide. You came to me kind of with a purpose, like kind of walk me through kind of how you ended up here, I guess. Like in your how'd you even find the podcast to start? Like, I'm just kind of curious at some of that stuff.
Well, I think that we'll probably end up getting into this about some of my past in playing baseball, but you get into these conversations and you get around these groups of guys where you essentially are sitting there and philosophically pontificating, how are we going to make money once we get outside of playing minor league baseball, And I had influences in real estate all around me. My mom was a real estate agent. I have an uncle that owns several houses in West Chicago. My grandmother, they own some houses in Oak Park and Berwyn. And then my brother's in the Air Force, and he, at each base that he goes to, he purchases a home, moves to the next base, rents that to somebody on the previous base. So these things were kind of going on around me, and I was aware of the power of real estate. Just, combining the long-term financial freedom with the concept of leverage, and maybe you don't have to have a lot of money to get started. So the next question became, how do I educate myself with this in the easiest way possible? And as you might imagine, in the baseball world, you have a lot of riding around on buses and just dead time where all you do is have your headphones in. And this is when I originally stumbled upon 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 I can do this. Every single one of these is a success story, but I wanted something more specific. So I'm seeking out, like, how can I find a more specific, something where it's a more of a niche scenario. That's when I come across the 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗵 podcast. And I started recognizing that every single episode was about a specific neighborhood. Oh, I kind of know about these neighborhoods, but if I keep listening to these and keep learning more about these neighborhoods, then it's going to put me in a position where I'm educating myself on something even more specific, and it's something that I'm interested in. So I couldn't get enough of them. Then I start to segue outside of the baseball world. And I'm like, what do I want to do? You know, and I think everybody kind of goes through this. Usually it's probably leaving college or leaving high school. But for me, I was in a scenario where it was like, I'm older. I've gotten to see what a lot of my friends who went straight from college into their careers did. And everybody seemed to kind of be a cog in the machine, or they kind of seemed to be trying to climb the corporate ladder, doing these different things. So I knew I wanted to do something where I could learn on the job and learn from a mentor and learn from people who were doing it before me. And so, yeah, I cold outreached you. I actually cold outreached you and Tom. I talked to Tom first, and the conversation did not go well. Tom's like, yeah, I mean, you could moonlight on the side if you want to look for some deals for me. And I'm like, I don't really know what that means. And I sent you guys both a very similar, like, hey, I'm interested in trying to figure out a way to get involved in this industry. I don't really know where to start, but I can tell you guys know what you're talking about. The conversation with you and GC was much more like, hey, I have no idea what you have available, or if you have anything available with GC, but I just want to get involved in some way. And you happen to be hiring a role for new business development manager, but it wasn't even posted. The role was not posted at the time. So you thought our conversation was about that role, but I was the only one that knew anything about it. So
I actually didn't know. Like, I get inquiries all the time, and I always try to take them seriously, because one thing I like about getting interested people off of Bigger Pockets is what I just said before. It's like people that want to be here and want to learn, and I don't expect anyone, yourself included, to be here forever. But I want you to have a place that you can learn to grow for whatever you're gonna do next, whether it be on your own or somewhere else. So the conversation I recall, I remember, like, I think I said something on the podcast and you kind of gravitated
That's
towards
exactly what it was. You had said, Tom, you and Tom were, doing your first 8 to 10 minutes or whatever it was, just about. And you had kind of like offhandedly said something along the lines of, I'm going to be looking for somebody to take over what I'm doing right now with GC, or just something like very vague along those lines. And I'm like, I got to figure out a way to get whatever that is. So I actually just inquired as like a general inquiry on the career page, which is originally how one of the HR reps, Kristen, reached out to me. And she's like, well, what position are you applying for? And I'm like, just kind of whatever you guys have available. And at the time it was just funny because she didn't understand. She's like, right, but I mean, was there a specific job that you were... And I was like, not really. I just was hoping to be able to talk to Mark about maybe some opportunities. And then I got on your calendar, which was very accessible.
I wouldn't be a good salesperson if it wasn't, right?
You were very easy to communicate with. So, and then, the rest was history.
But I don't remember saying that on the podcast, like announcing it. And I do it for a reason. I'd say a lot of things on the show just to make sure I hold myself, it kind of holds me accountable. Like I said out loud, now I got to go do whatever it was. And handing my position over to somebody else, it was always something that probably was scarier like for most people. But I remember like after our first call, maybe the call wasn't on. I'm like, I got the perfect role for me. The whole time you were calling about that role, and it actually took me.
I didn't know what the role was. I just was calling. I just was like, they got to be able to figure out something. I had you
take the predictive index.
I did. That's exactly what you did.
I'm like, this guy would be a great sales guy.
Mm-hmm. I did the predictive index, the qualitative one or the personality one. And I have no idea what the score was for that, but I wasn't worried about it because I'm like, I know that they're just kind of like, putting you into a quadrant here. And then you sent out the cognitive predictive index. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to have to prepare for this. So I'm like, getting good night's sleeps. I'm like making sure I'm hydrated. I'm taking these brain pills. I downloaded this app. I think it was called like 𝗓𝗏𝗏, one of those apps where you do like the mini games to like sharpen your cognitive. And then finally I took it. But in the meantime, one of the HR reps followed up and said, hey, don't know if you got this link to the cognitive predictive index. And then I still don't know how I did. I've been searching around in the GC archives to figure out if it went well, but I don't know. It went well enough to get hired, I guess. So.
Yeah, you charmed me, so we just let that bad score. No, I'm joking. I don't know what it was. Obviously, I had to pass our threshold, so that's awesome. Well,
low threshold.
Well, you were a professional baseball player. You played. You fulfilled like what most boyhood dreams might be. I don't know how many days you played in the full leagues, or if you stayed in the minors your whole career, but that's huge. And I don't know how you compare it to, but you almost like that. You had so much. You had like college years, or being a kid. Like you had just that extended, where you came into the professional world later, but with different advantages. How did your career as a professional athlete prepare you for what you do now, which is sales?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it goes back a little bit to what I was saying earlier, which is the preparedness piece. I think a lot of people, when they think of sports and when they think of being prepared as it might pertain to sports, they think about it as like practice. And I think that that's like definitely an element of it with the skill building side of it. But I think what you really learn in athletics, specifically as you get to higher and higher levels, is how to prepare yourself to be able to put your best self out there, perform at your peak in the moments that you're trying to perform at your peak in. And so when you're younger, like when you're in college, that looks like before the game, let me make sure that I drink a Red Bull and take some painkillers, Advil. Let me make sure I put some icy hot on my arm. Because when you're younger, it's just like short-term solution to the problem. But as you get older, that transforms to, how long is my stretching routine when I'm 26, 27, 28? How much mobility work am I doing in the gym in the off season? Because you start to gain the bigger picture understanding of, I'm going to feel better and be better prepared to perform at my peak to do this as I get older. And so I think that translates to the professional world in sales in a similar way, where it's like you get used to needing to be prepared to perform at your peak at all different times, and you're not scared of what that looks like. You're not nervous to perform on an important sales call or go visit somebody because you know that you're putting the time in and laying the foundation to perform at your peak in those situations. And then also just the sort of dog-eat-dog world of the locker room and the competitive nature of the sports themselves. So you're in a position where it requires a high level of discipline over and over and over. And you're competing with all these guys that are your friends, but also they're trying to take your job and you're trying to take their job. So naturally you have a built-in quota, and that quota is climbing to the next level. So you get used to needing to be prepared to perform at your peak. You get used to trying to be disciplined to live up to what the next goal is. And all of those things tie into the sales world. Whether it's being prepared to have phone calls, putting yourself in a position to succeed, and then not being intimidated, but being motivated by quotas and goals and trying to accomplish things for a greater purpose. In the sports world, that might be your team winning a championship, your brotherhood, the organization, et cetera. In this scenario, it could be the sales team, the onboarding team, 𝗤𝘗 Realty as a whole, or even in the straight up Chicago investor scenario, the industry. How can I put my 2 cents in to leave the industry better than I found it? You know what I mean?
When I think early on, and we've been around 20 years now, but at 𝗤𝘗, we used to call it, it's like working for a family-run business. And my mindset has shifted around that because you can't fire family. You can't, I don't know, just you might even handle your family differently with specific scenarios just to kind of be nice. So, because you got to see them at Thanksgiving, right? Mm-hmm. But I've shifted my mindset to running a business or having a business is more of a team sport. And, you have A players, you have B players, you trade people, maybe trading might be translated to the hiring or firing process. Right. But how is like the whole team mentality? I imagine that is something, how has that helped you like kind of slide into, I wouldn't call it the corporate world, but like the real office space? No.
I think that part's important because I think that what you realize when you're on a team, whether it's in a clubhouse or on the field or whatever, and this is going to be very cliched, but as you perform better to the greater good, then it raises all, a rising tide raises all boats. So you're in a position where not only is your day-to-day life going to be a lot more enjoyable if when you go to the office, people enjoy having you around and you enjoy having people around, which is very much a mindset, by the way. But also, as the company continues to achieve their goals and grow, much like how the team continues to achieve their goals and grow, you are going to reach higher goals yourself, things that you never would have been able to do individually, or just you never would have been able to do in maybe as happy of a way. And I think that when you start to think about pursuit and success and what those different things mean, I think happiness probably deserves a spot on that list. And I think generally, and maybe this is a personality thing, but I am happier doing that with my teammates or with my, coworkers or with my friends, et cetera. So
talk to me about the mindset, because there's a lot of people out there that would listen to this and say, my job sucks. How can I ever get that mindset, or I have to have the right job? Is that something that anyone can have anywhere?
Well, I think it's like trying to be genuine and recognizing things that you appreciate about people and your employees, and genuinely looking for ways that you can improve yourself and the company. I mean, if I have something that I'm interested in, whether it is within 𝗤𝘗 or whether it's in my personal life, I'm much more invested in it emotionally. So obviously, if it's just plug and chug, I need to memorize this. If you think about it compared to like school, if you're memorizing dates and times and et cetera, versus the classes that you were actually interested in going to, you probably learned significantly more and enjoyed those things. The things that you enjoy are the things that you're good at. So it's kind of this vicious cycle of, if I have the mentality that I want to invest my time in this and I continue to get better at it, now I have a positive reinforcement loop of wanting to continue doing it. And if the company can align those goals, whether it's in incentive financially or with vertical mobility, with the goals of myself, then I'm going to continue getting better at those things. I'm going to like it because I'm getting better at them. And then as I get better at them, then the company is going to get better and reach their goal,
I asked that question to you only because it's very admirable. Like we've been working together for a year, and the energy you bring to any room is amazing. Like you just have something about you where like the whole office like gravitates around you. They like talking to you. They like engaging you. They like busting chops. Like you just have this presence about you, and it's just amazing. And I hope, I don't know if you realize how powerful it is, but everyone just loves to be around you. And I think people take you more seriously at that point as well too, where they like being around you, but then when you need to get something done, it helps you get something done too, because they like being around you and they respect you. So I don't know, whatever that is in you is huge.
I mean, I appreciate you saying that. Obviously, I think that a big part of it again is just, responding positively to criticism, I think, is a big thing. A few years ago, we're recording this a few days after New Year's. So it reminds me of a few years ago, I had a New Year's resolution of, I want to respond positively to every criticism that somebody gives me. And I think that year, what happened was people were much more inclined to be transparent and open with their thoughts. And it doesn't just mean criticisms, it means positive things too. And what that does is it opens up the door for you to be able to be transparent with other people. And I think that in a lot of ways, the definition of intimacy is being able to be transparent with people. And I think that is part of what transcends. I have no problem telling people how it is, but I also have no problem complimenting them when I see something that I really admire about them. So hopefully that can create a culture or a circle of transparency and getting stuff done and having a great time doing it.
No, I like that. Because, especially when you look at it the way you look at it, if someone has a problem with you or they're frustrated with you, actually going deeper on that almost. So a lot of people run from that, but like understanding like, whoa, I didn't realize that made you upset, or I'm really curious being curious about why people are offended and all that stuff. And sometimes it doesn't work. It offends people more, but at that point it's like you're trying though. And I think that goes a long way. So I brag to everybody, you married, bought your first property, had a kid, started a new career, not in that order, but you did that all like in a year span. Like, wow, you came out of the ball club and you just said, I'm gonna get all these things done. Like, was that intentional? Was that just pent up energy and planned for a long time? Any takeaways that you learned out of all that?
No, I mean, yeah, especially when I look back at it, I think that it was a lot of things happening at once. But at the same time, I think to the point of, was it pent up energy? I don't know if I'd call it pent up as much as you get older in the minors and you see your friends that you graduated college with, in their second and third and fourth promotions, or
they're gonna say marriages
or kids, getting their business off the ground or whatever they're doing, like they're seemingly far ahead of you in their professional life. So you come out of it ready to be like, first of all, your meter for what all the people around you are doing is set at a lot higher bar. Your impression of what I should be doing at this age is higher. So you naturally acclimate to get yourself to as close to that bar as you can get. I think that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is just, I saw a thing recently about increasing your barometer for stress, how maybe like a waitress in New York City, their impression of what a slow day is going to be a lot different than the slow day of somebody that's working at a small diner shop in a rural Midwest town. So I think I was purposely putting myself in a stress test position so that it felt like my productivity could go through the roof. So now, it's hard for me to just sit around, like my understanding of what it means to be productive versus my perception of what a slow day is, or what it means to be highly productive has changed now. And my goal is to use that to compound in the years moving forward. So I guess that's kind of my main takeaways.
Let me add one more thing you accomplished in that year is you started this new role and you killed it. There's not a property manager owner in this country that wouldn't kill to have you on their team. So one, that's me showing my appreciation for what you've done, but you helped us, you led us adding more new clients and new doors than we've ever had in the 20 years we've been around. So like you were able to do all these other things personally while still coming in and crushing it. So I just want to make sure that
I guess
you get
I don't
that credit
mean to,
and you get that.
I don't mean to push the work with GC to the side at all. I mean, to me, I sometimes get almost an imposter syndrome thinking about it, because it's like, in a lot of ways, I was just capitalizing on GC's brand, on Mark Ainley's brand, on Straight Up Chicago Investors' brand, in trying to use that. And again, going back to the original conversation and reaching out to you, that was my whole goal, setting out to how can I find a mentor that I can use to be almost like a paid internship, and then in the process, utilize the pipeline and the reputation that I know that they've built. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that I think that the it works well together. You know, it allows me to try to utilize the things that you've built in a way that hopefully you think of, you know, yourself being able to use those things. And then also just try to do a great job. I mean, I feel like I've learned so much this year. Another thing that I saw recently was actually about imposter syndrome and about how, like, you think about if you don't have any sense of imposter syndrome, then what are you really, you know, you either are behind, you know, and not feeling like you're accomplishing enough, or you're ahead and feeling like, do I really belong here? So I think I'd rather be in the imposter syndrome version of that.
Well, I think about the biggest moments in my life or the biggest leaps I took, man, they were uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think to have that check in place with yourself of, if I don't feel uncomfortable, if I don't feel like scared, scared is not the right word, nervous, worried about failure, ability to complete, whatever it might be, you're probably not pushing yourself enough.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that I see a lot of this hustle porn and that kind of stuff on like social media and Twitter and whatever. It's like, you know, we got to wake up at 4 a.m., ice bath, heat lamp, you know, yada, yada, yada. But the reality of the situation is, like, if you're not growing, then you're probably not uncomfortable. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not growing. I mean, in the world of sports, we talk a lot about how before the game, before a big race, before the game, you know, whatever it might be, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Your belly's going to be churning. Your palms are going to get sweaty. Your knees are weak. No, your mouth is going to get dry, all these different things. But the thing about all those things it is your body's natural physiological response to preparing itself to go out and do high performance. So your body actually shuts down partially its digestive system, which is where the stomach and the mouth, it starts to perspire. And that's where the sweaty hands and the sweaty back and everything come from. And these are all things that your body is naturally doing to put you in higher performance mode. And so that's like a direct actual physiological tie to it. But the point is, those things that you're feeling, you're associating them with nerves, but it's actually being associated with putting yourself in a better position to succeed and perform. So
I was listening to the Bootstrappers podcast, Gwen in Omaha, but what she had on, she was talking about productivity, and she had a specialist on there, or expert on productivity, and she was saying that they threw out some numbers on like a percentage of YouTube videos about productivity that are by people that are 23 and younger versus the mom or the dad that's got 3 kids in all the sports. They have careers, maybe they're running multiple businesses. They have they're doing not-for-profit work. Like it's funny that we're in this internet age on YouTube where we're actually getting our source of information from with these people.
Well, I mean, that's why you got to be careful who you pay attention to and who you listen to, and just being deliberate in the people that you follow.
And the other thing, what you just said, then it's kind of struck me recently, is following people that are maybe 10 years ahead of you versus, we could all, Sam Zell or Buffett and follow them, but it's like, they're way out there. Like you get some stuff from it, but I think it's making sure you're aligning yourself with somebody that it's like achievable in the next decade.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times those people are hard to find, because if they really are that person or the level of success 10 years or maybe in your wildest dreams where you want to go, they're not really accessible on a level where you can really learn from them, or you got to pay a ton of money to be able to follow them. So that's why, like, you're such a good example of this, where, you know, you have started to develop a more public presence and you've done these different things, but the way to access you was the only way that I knew how, which was just cold outreach. And obviously it's turned into what it is, but I just think finding a legitimate real life mentor is just really important if you're trying to get where you want to go.
You've spent the last year, you came here for real estate investing reasons and want to grow that. You talked about that earlier. You spent the last year in these different networking events around a bunch of, I hate the word wannabe, but I always end up going with it, but wannabe real estate investors or soon to be real estate investors, maybe 1-2 properties in. What are some of the traits you see of them or common things that might hold them back from moving faster or growing faster?
Yeah, I think that this is probably going to be a pretty common response, but analysis paralysis. I mean, I think a lot of times if it's holding them back, it's because they're looking too deep into it and they're thinking, okay, well, when the market corrects it, the classic trying to time the market, that different piece of it. And then the flip side of that is I do think that there's a tendency sometimes for people to move too fast into the game where they think, I just want to get in, I just want to get in, I just want to get in. And I'm all for the 0 to 1 mentality, but you got to make sure that you're talking to the right people and understanding what exactly you're getting into, because I love real estate and I think it's a really powerful tool, but there are definitely people that can get caught with their pants down. And there's also other investment opportunities out there to explore. So I think that probably the number one thing holding people back is analysis paralysis and doing too much research. And then B, horror stories of people who jumped in too fast and, whether it's a crazy tenant or a difficult property or dealing with the city or, and I think that they all probably fall into a similar bucket, but that seems to be the general, or the big one, I don't have time, so I don't know.
Where does the balance lay for the person that jumps in too fast, learns the real life scenarios versus the person that takes forever, executes it right? It's never really privy to the trouble side of it. I feel there's a line there that
100%
you could justify.
And I think that the line there probably lies in what else you have going on in your personal life. I think that if you're a single person and you don't have any kids and you're younger, because and you and Tom talk about it all the time, time is your biggest asset, but it's basically time and then your stomach for risk. And then I think that there's another piece of it. It's just kind of like reserves and cash on hand. If I get into a situation where I need this to work. Anytime you need something to work, then you're probably not going to make the privy decision. So if I need it to work for my family, or I need it to work because I'm going to be retiring in 10 years and I need to have a passive income form, then you don't really have the opportunity to be patient and wait for the correct deal.
I feel there's a correlation between how fast somebody moves and how little money they are putting into it. You always get I got this partner, he's the money guy, and I just want to get these properties. I feel there's a direct correlation of how much they have to put in.
Oh, 100%. That's the risk that you feel. And that risk is, that's kind of what I'm saying when there's other people involved, because it might not just be my money or just my savings. It might be me and my wife's savings, or it might be me and my parents and my wife's savings. All these different factors go into it. But that if a guy goes into it and he has a lot of his own skin in the game, then even if he gets burnt, he's going to learn a ton there. It's not going to be secondary learning on somebody else's dollar. And you're also not going to burn the bridge in the process.
What, you went to the Ohio State. I will make sure for that there. I know we got some Michigan listeners, so I'm sorry. Don't turn off right now. But you just turned 30?
30, yep.
All right, the big
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. So what would, 10 years ago, you're at the Ohio State. Like, what advice would you give yourself? Today's the 30-year-old Shea, give the 20-year-old Shea?
I think that, so I actually got drafted in 2015 and 2017. I ended up not selecting to go in 2015 and went back. I had a lot of fun in those 2 years, but I think that if I had the opportunity to maybe sign in 2015, then everything gets sped up. I think that in that same scenario, either I have more time to continue playing a young man's game, or I get into my potential career faster. Another thing that I think about a lot, depending on when I would have talked to the Ohio State version of myself, would have been maybe to lean into something maybe more specific. At the time, I thought that I wanted to go to law school. So I was in a pre-law situation. I was in a poli-sci situation, essentially. But I think that had I gained something more concrete, maybe in like accounting or a finance degree, something like that, then I think that it may give me more of a foundation for what lies ahead. But the other side of me says that it doesn't really matter. Get your degree, unless it's going to be something ultra specific, then you got to go out and figure it out in the real world anyway. So
the first day you started working here, actually, it's funny because I remember the second day, you were originally supposed to start on a Thursday, and you were coming back from your honeymoon, and I remember texting. I remember staying at my house like, yeah, maybe he wants an extra day. I don't have to deal with him tomorrow, and then he gets an extra day. And I texted you, and you're like, yeah, it'd be great. So I'm like, yes. So we'll start on Friday. Yeah. I always like people start on the end of the week anyways, just because they get a couple days in, and then you go to the weekend, and it's not a full week. But you started that Friday, and we went right to the field.
Oh, yeah.
We went to Naperville and a client that was looking to hire us, and they ultimately did hire us. And then we ended up kind of doing a tour, and we ended up going to the south suburbs. And I was sitting in the, kind of setting up the story for you here, but I was sitting in the property manager role, just trying to document some stuff and figure out, how we could provide better service for our clients. And one of them, we had an issue with a tenant in Dalton, and we went down there, and for this owner, I wanted to go and knock on the door and talk to this tenant personally. And I dragged you with that, and we pulled up to this house. So I love when you tell the story. So if you,
yeah, no, I mean, to me, this is not what my understanding of the role was going to be, even a little bit. I'm thinking, I'm going to be calling people, going to networking events, going to these fancy dinners downtown, like all these things that encompass what a sales role is versus what a property manager is. Those were the things that I thought that I was going to be doing. So, I mean, yeah, I had just gotten back from my honeymoon. I was in St. Lucia for, 6 days or something like that. Basically living in a paradise scenario, eating whatever I wanted, whenever. And I get back and you're like, hey, first day will be tomorrow. And I'm still trying to filter the, what are those beers called in St. Lucia? Whatever. Trying to get those out of my system. And you text me and say, here's what we're going to do tomorrow. Boom, boom, boom. Be at the office at like 7:15 a.m., which if you know anything about minor league baseball, that is probably when you're still on the bus from the night before. So anyway, I hop in the car, and sure enough, the first place we go to is this nice townhome in 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵𝘁. And I was like, man, this is easy. I could do this all day. And then you're like, all right, we're going to go to this place. And I don't have any understanding of the geography in Chicago at the time, by the way. So we're just driving along, and I'm just kind of like, whistling out the window, probably talking too much because I was really nervous. And another thing about this, I don't know if I've ever told you this. In that text, you said, I'm going to be wearing jeans and clean tennis shoes. And so that day I went to the store and I bought a pair of clean tennis shoes. I bought these tennis shoes, and I've actually been wearing them every single day since that day. Anyway, we're driving from this nice townhome in 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵𝘁 with these real nice people. They had a black lab. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And we get down to, we're almost to Dalton, and I'm like, hey, do you mind if we stop at this gas station to go to the bathroom?
We're driving down through Harvey to get to Dalton.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
Harvey.
That's what it was. I remember your face.
We were going through Harvey, and I mean, to each their own. There's a lot of boarded up windows and empty lots. But,
dude, Harvey is a war zone scary. You can't even downplay that.
Well,
I'm
trying to downplay it. But we're driving through there, and I have no idea where we are. I just know, we're somewhere that is not the Gold Coast, which is where I was living at the time. And you're like, let's go to this McDonald's instead. So
you wanted to stop to go to the bathroom at some random gas station.
Yeah, I wanted to go to this. There was like this marathon, and there was a bunch of buddies hanging out in front of the whatever. Anyway, I
remember I told you if a place sells wigs at the gas station, like this is not the right place for you to stop and pee.
Yeah, that was the first piece of knowledge that you gave me. So I pop in the McDonald's, and of course the doors are locked because you can't go. Apparently, you can't use the bathrooms in McDonald's. And so I had to buy a little coffee. Anyway, get out of the McDonald's, and we're driving over to Dalton. And this is just like a world that I'm not familiar with. You got to remember, I grew up in rural Ohio in a town that has, 10 to 15,000 people. And that was the village center of that rural town in Ohio. Everywhere around me was farmland. So anyway, we stop at the house in Dalton, and you're just like, I just want to pop in here real quick. And I'm like seeing pit bulls roaming all over the streets. And there's just, it's just not an area. And you're like, you can wait in the car if you want. And I'm sitting there thinking like, well, I feel like the last place I'd want to be is in the car by myself, especially in the passenger seat. So we get out of the car and we go up to the front, and I'm just like sweating bullets.
The house next door was boarded up. I remember, like it had a hole in the road. Like it was empty for years. Like,
the house next door was not in good shape, and neither was the landscaping. And we're like approaching, and my palms are so sweaty. I'm just trying to remind myself, this is my body getting me ready for performance. And we're like shimmying along. We knock on the front door. You're pounding on the front of the door, yelling, GC Realty, GC. And I'm like, dude, this cannot be what this job is about. And then we're like shimmying along the side of the house, and you're like, watch out, because we're close to that window. And this window, the window to our right, was also broken. And I'm thinking like, there's got to be squatter. There's got to be something going on here. We get to the backyard, which there was a back window that was like partially broken into. And you're like, all right, we got to get into this house somehow.
Well, I thought it was empty. I was pretty convinced it was empty at that point.
Yeah, you were pretty convinced. I had absolutely no idea what was going on or what we were about to find in there. And sure enough, you just pick up a stick from the backyard, and you break out the rest of the window. And you do the thing where you take the stick and you put it around the edges of the window to make sure there's no shards.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
you only do that because you didn't do that one time and you got cut and you got shards in your skin. Like,
well, that's the thing.
Was a lesson learned.
I was starting to realize what this job really entailed at this point. And I'm just like thinking, I literally just came from St. Lucia. I'm in my brand new clean tennis shoes. And you like poke your head in through the broken out window and you're like, 𝗤𝘵𝗄𝐿𝐶. And then you say to me, and this is no joke, you say to me, hey, can you go to the side door and just be ready to open it up quick? And I'm like, this cannot be serious. And so like I hear you walking through the house and I'm like sitting there waiting at that side door. And keep in mind, this is along the side of the house where the broken out window is right behind me. And you let me in. And then, I mean, I don't know if you can tell this on camera, but I'm like, quite a bit taller than you are, but I'm like creeping behind you, and you're like poking your head through doors. Eventually we get into the main room. We find out there's nobody in there. Place was actually a decent renovation job other than the television that was on. There's 2 televisions. There was one in the main room mounted on the wall that had probably 6 bullet holes in it.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we go into the bedroom and there's 6 bullet holes in that television as well. And I just like could not believe what was going on. And I could not get out of there fast enough. I'm like, dude, we got to get out of here. And at the time I was thinking, this guy's got to be trying to prove something to me. Like, I'm hard and you're going to follow what I say, But yeah, we hopped in the car. Everything ended up being all right. You got the keys set up and you posted the 5-day, or maybe it was
Notice of abandonment.
Yeah,
that's
notice
what I
of
posted.
abandonment.
I came prepared, man. I was looking out for our client there.
Yeah. We posted that on the door and we got out of there. And then we went and we had Italian beef sandwiches.
We ended up back in Berwyn looking at some buildings.
Oh, was it in Berwyn? Yeah,
I think that was it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, those 2 6-unit buildings. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, man. Dude, I love that.
And that was
story.
the first day.
No, that was the first 4 hours. Like, that was like, you were still stuck with me wondering what the hell was going on for the next 4 hours.
Well, I'm still trying to wake up at that point. I mean, you got to remember, it's like 9 a.m. Oh, and on that drive, you also tell me, just FYI, like anytime that you're coming down here, already I'm thinking, when am I going to be coming down here? You're like, just make sure you don't come down here after 10 a.m. I'm like, 10 a.m.? I'm like, you got to be kidding me, dude. 10 a.m.? I'm like, usually I'm not rolling out of bed by 10 a.m., I don't know.
We stopped in the south side for a couple of things. And we wasn't even part of market stuff. It was just like you were stuck with me doing the role. But man, what a great story. You've told that story before, and I appreciate you coming on here and telling it again. But that was it's funny how far we came, man. You've been a huge asset to us, and I just want to take this moment to say thank you, and I appreciate everything you've done for us, for the company. You've been a great friend. Like, you've been just awesome to hang out with. Like I said before, you got a great presence. So
yeah,
dude,
no, I appreciate.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming on here.
Yeah,
and we'll talk.
All right.